I would like to open the meeting for the Opioid Settlement Fund Advisory Committee. I want to call it to order, and we can start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, just a general announcement. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, this meeting is being recorded. First on our agenda tonight is we have a guest speaker. Her name is Nikki Fontaine. She's the director of the Substance Use Disorder Homeless Outreach Fall River Addiction Support and Treatment Response Team. That's a lot to say, better known as the FAST team. Nikki, would you come up, please? We've asked Nikki to come up and tell us about her service, what she does, and how she might be able to help and support what we're trying to do in Westport.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I supervise the fast response team, which is made up of currently 2 recovery coaches, a clinician, police liaison, a data outreach coordinator, and myself. We also just received the Department of Justice Connect and Protect grant, which will be adding a mental health peer worker and another clinician, possibly another officer. When we started the CARA grant about 4 years ago, that was the second program we had created. The first one was Project Reconnect, where we go to the homes post-overdose with an officer as well and a coach. And now we have the advocacy fund, which is basically we get to pay for people's general needs. We put in a line for bereavement support, so we pay if someone overdoses in the city and the family can't afford to help them get services to bury them. We also have basic needs. We pay for sober living, room and board, any kind of miscellaneous items that a grant doesn't seem to cover. So we created the advocacy fund because sometimes it's the difference of someone needing $200 to get their truck towed so that they can then get a job. We put very little stipulations on how we can support people in recovery. The other thing we just created is enhancement without encampment, which takes people directly from the streets of Fall River, and we pay 6 months in sober living for them. That's been one of the most successful programs we've had ever. When I ran the numbers last month, we had, I want to say about 63 people that have gone into treatment, entered sober living, and stayed there. We had 3 people that left and didn't come back within a month. We already had about 20 graduates because we're at like the 8-month mark now from when we started the program. So we already had 20 graduates that are still living in sober living. They're paying on their own now. They did not return to the street or active addiction. And there's about 50-something still in there. So that's another.
Something still where? Sorry.
In sober living, like they're currently still engaging with services off the street and doing well. Initially, we had planned for 20 people to do the program, and because it was so successful, we ended up doubling the funding, and there's possibly still more as long as it continues the way it is. So Project Reconnect, Advocacy Fund, the FAST team, EWE, and I have one more that I'm missing. Oh, the DOJ. So in my experience between all of it, where we've really made the difference is meeting people where they're at, right? You want to break down as many barriers as you can. So we created a form where they can come to City Hall and get a free birth certificate if we acknowledge that they're homeless or using or whatever. We also created a program where now we just walk into the RMV and get them IDs or state IDs that are paid for. Just those barriers that keep people from getting treatment and being successful, because The main thing is, and I'm in personal recovery, I just got 11 years clean. The main thing is no one wants to get clean to be miserable and not have a life. So connecting them back to the community is super important. And to do that, they need an ID to get a job, all those things.
And you said the funding comes from the CARA grant?
We initially got a CARA grant, and then we now got a DOJ grant, and we use the opioid abatement settlement money. So I'm able to, we provide Narcan and trainings. Actually, Glenn's a frequent flyer because we partnered with Westport, Somerset, and Swansea, as well as Fall River. So actually, all of our services are already able to be here, and that's how I was able to see Pam, as she mentioned. And also, we have the ability now, because we're growing so much, that, like I've said to the chief, anything that Westport needs, I come from Dayton, so I'm a small town girl too. I played softball with everyone in Westport. I want the small towns to not be forgotten about, So like I mentioned to the chief, any partnership you guys need, I know the COSAP grant ends, and realistically, with the way the federal funding is going right now, it's probably not going to be renewed. So anything that we can do to support it, we definitely will, whatever you guys need. The co-response with the clinicians being on site or going the next day for follow-ups, anything like that.
I know that you had a meeting with the chief. Mm-hmm. And what were the specific things that, unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight, that he asked you in connection with helping us and helping the police department continue to carry out the role they've had in the COSA program?
Yep, so basically he was saying that they go out once a month, typically, to the homes post-overdose or just substance use. And he really wanted to narrow that down to at least once a week. We also spoke about how one of our clinicians or both of our clinicians could be available to you guys at the exact time of the incident. As I was kind of explaining before we started this, our clinicians, because they work with child and family, and that's the regional contract for all of this area, they're able to Section 12 people on the spot. Whereas if you don't have a child and family clinician, the process is they have to go to the emergency room. They then wait hours to be evaluated. A lot of times, because that clinician wasn't on the scene, if they're not getting good collateral, they call it collateral information, they're releasing them right back to the street. And we were seeing that in astronomical numbers in Fall River, especially from the police, because they weren't equipped to deal with mental health, right? So they're going to a scene. The only avenue they can take is to section them to the hospital. And because the police were sectioning at such a high rate, our percentage was like abysmal. It was like 5% of people actually being held. So now, when they're evaluated right on the street, that clinician is determining whether they go. And Child and Families has their own unit. They can stay on site right there, and within 24 hours, they're there at further care. It's actually being held, So not only just substance use, because we all know mental health plays a huge part in that. It's like the chicken or the egg, which came first, right? So we try to address both. And I don't know what your homeless population numbers are, but for me, I was homeless. You're not going to get sober, go to detox, and come back to the street and stay sober. So any of those, I highly suggest the sober program, the sober living program.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Absolutely.
So among the different possible partnerships with Westport, so let me back up. So the sober housing, do you all have contracts with different sober housing, or do you just provide through the advocacy fund payment for people to go wherever?
So it's two separate things. The advocacy fund is for people that don't qualify, like if they The enhancement without encampment was specifically for our homeless. You don't
Okay,
have to
got
do it that way. Advocacy fund will pay like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just to get them on their feet to get other funding. But, sorry, what was the question again?
Well, it's kind of changed now because I messed up.
Okay.
So actually, what I'm trying to figure out that if there would be a way for us to build on the enhancement without encampment, although I don't, we don't have the extent of encampment and unhoused people, but we do have people who could use sober housing, and we're not likely to get sober housing in a short time period here.
So I definitely suggest in a place like Westport where you don't put that stipulation that they have to be homeless. I would just say they have to be residents of Westport that need the sober living. And since it's through, our catchment area, as we call it, we could definitely come up with something like that. But as far as the sober houses go, we don't contract with them. They just are very aware of who we are, and we've sent so many. But we typically try to stay in New Bedford, Fall River, Taunton, and Attleboro so that our coaches can also work with them and ensure their success. We have sent a few to Plymouth that just really needed to get away.
Does anyone else have any questions? I wonder if you're aware of anyone who is originally from Westport who has gone to Fall River and has been unhoused.
We do have a lot of overlap. Let's be honest, Fall River has a ton of services, but we also have a ton of drugs. So people often come from Westport or Somerset, stay in Fall River. I would say right now, I probably have 2 or 3 that came from Westport that are homeless.
Okay.
It's not an astronomical number. Most of the time, if people are coming from Westport, they have a friend they can stay with or, stuff like that. I see more of the Westport homeless people staying right over the line over here instead of actually living in Fall River in the woods, You guys have stores.
Near the bike path.
Exactly.
So if we could probably, I would imagine, be helpful where if you had applied for some of our fund, would you be able to keep that money separate and hold it for people from Westport that are looking for sober living? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, so already, just underneath the CARA and stuff, we have a good pot of money that can help you guys. That was already set aside for you guys a couple of years ago, but because of the COSAP, they just utilize that more. So beyond that, if you came up with different programs that you thought were helpful, we absolutely would keep it separate. We have everything that we need in FARA between our opiate abatement money and the programs we've built. Our goal is absolutely how can we service Westport and Somerset and Swansea better, because that's what we initially set out to do. So we have this pot of money that's here and able to already assist you guys. If you come up with something such as an EWE program specifically for Westport, and I'd be happy to get you guys the application process and our referral forms and how everything works. I'm an open book, so whatever you guys feel that you need and decide is best, I'd be happy to help.
Yes.
And you could also provide someone to write those grants.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be very helpful. When I think about how to bridge, because we talked a lot about bridging, we don't have really services set up in Westport. Right? It's pretty clear. We don't have it, and that Fall River and New Bedford do. And so we've been talking about how do we bridge and make the passage from here to those services easier.
Right.
And that's where I think we could use a lot of guidance on what it is you would need or what is the services need so that we can help facilitate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that would be too difficult on our end because we did already have an MOU signed with EMS and the police a couple of years ago. And
Could you explain what that is?
memorandum of understanding agreement.
Okay.
So the two towns, we already agreed to collaborate and provide a set amount of services, such as recovery coaches and clinical. Beyond that, I've done this work for 10 years. Go ahead.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So you talk about recovery coaching and clinical service. You mean specifically in overdose follow-up with first responders?
No,
Okay.
it can be, so in the initial CARA application, we are to provide you guys naloxone to your first responders or your community members, provide training in that, and provide recovery coaches and clinician, whether it is post-overdose follow-up or co-response on the scene.
Could it be recovery coaching in a different setting, or is it all? Wow.
And what about transportation?
We do also provide transportation if it's to a treatment facility of any kind. It could be a doctor's appointment if it's going to help the person. We also will help them get set up with Mass Health and PT1s and all those follow-up things.
So I'm kind of blown away. It seems like the bridge question is a key one. Like, how do we let people know about these services, and how do we put more people in front of them and make sure everybody has access to that?
Yeah, so we have trifolds and a website that we can give you guys. I didn't bring them today, but I can definitely provide all of that. And then you can just, however you guys get the message out to the
Right.
people, we're already here, we're ready, so.
How do people find out about you in Fall River? Because
We
part of
have-
it is being where people who need the services are.
We have a 24-hour hotline. Now, pretty much everyone in Fall River knows what we're doing, but initially, we would make Facebook posts and stuff like that. We did do a media campaign. WSAR has been great. But honestly, it's pretty much word of mouth. City website we used. As long as if you can get some collaboration between the police department, EMS, some of the businesses here to just put the trifold out, like the health department, we have ours there. Once the word gets out, it goes pretty quickly.
Do you ever go to the AA or NA meetings to tell people about what you have to offer?
So you can't do that. I do go to NA meetings, but it's supposed to be autonomous, and you can't talk about anything else like that, but you can leave the trifolds in the building that they hold the meetings.
Okay. Because one of the things we're trying to do here in Westport, and we have been doing, is data collection, which is trying to find out from people in the community what it is they think how to best utilize the funds.
Yep.
And Pam went to some meetings and talked with some people at the meetings to get some input. And sober living was one of the big ones, right?
It
Sober
is.
housing. And I know that our role is not to create a sober house, but it's to provide the financial support for that, right? So, we don't procure the person. So say the police department, which is not going to have the funds as of September, I believe, to continue on with a program where they go post-overdose with a clinician and meet with the people and talk to them about what they have, the services that are available, giving them Narcan,
Yep.
fentanyl test strips, all of that they're losing the funding. So I think that the committee is looking at how can we continue to support that, and I know that the chief is looking at other options, and that's why I think he met with you.
Yes.
So what do you think it would take, because in that line, to have a clinician be in Westport one day a week?
Not hard at all. I could do that probably starting next week.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Sign us up.
And what kind of financial support or assistance would you need with that?
None. It's already under the CARA grant.
But is the CARA grant going to be ending?
It does, but the SAMHSA has already told us that the second we apply, they'll I forget the term, but that we'll get it again for another 4 years. Because they were very impressed with, everything, the data that we had and stuff. The only thing that is a little concerning is that with the federal government right now. It was supposed to be released April 1st. It's still pending in the system, so we're waiting to write on NOFO. But beyond that, we do have backups to, like, speaking with Mayor Coogan, you know, he's very proud of the FAST team and what we've been able to accomplish, and I know he doesn't want the FAST team to go anywhere. So we've come up, just in the extreme emergent situation, how to continue exactly what we have, you know. Because I can't imagine that the federal issue continues next year. Basically, the delay right now is in their wording. They're removing the DEI stuff and all that. So by next year, either way, regardless, all these grants will be out, and even if you guys go for another grant, you know, we'll be happy to help you point in that right direction. But while we have it all, and I know that it's going to continue, I'm 100% certain, we're happy to help do what we set out to do here. So that includes giving you guys a clinician right away.
That's wonderful. I'm sure Chief Dunn is happy to hear that as well, because he really wants to continue this program. And you know, there's some thought about, you know, could we hire or have a social worker work in town to address mental health and substance use issues in town? What would that entail? I've met with the town administrator and talked about some of the logistics of that. And procurement is another whole nother ballgame. It's one thing to support a program,
Right.
but to procure the person
And then they need
do all that work.
supervision and everything else.
It's a whole nother ball of wax. So if there's a way for us to financially support having some service here without us having to do procurement,
Yep.
I think that the committee would be open to address that and talk about it.
So even if you went from, you know, instead of us just giving you 1 day a week and, you know, that piece, we could, if there was extra funding, we could go beyond that and just add another clinician from Child and Families so that you had it on a regular basis. That would be up to you, but just to utilize one of our 2 clinicians, because like I said, there's about, on average, 2 calls a day in Fall River that are mental health. And so there's all this other time in between, right, that the officer and the clinician are just waiting for a mental health call to come in. We could absolutely get them over here at any time. Lights and sirens, we're right over the line, right? So it actually doesn't take long to get here. But otherwise, if you did want to put funding towards it, we would just consider it an expansion of the FAST team, right? Everything could be separate. You could have your own through us. And I also know that you guys are within the area, so Child and Families is getting a van right now where we're picking out the hot zones in Fall River. They're just going to be driving this souped-up van where the initial assessment can take place in the van on the side of the road. And they're going to be going to hot zones and different calls. You guys are in that catchment area as well. So those 2 vans were already purchased, one for the New Bedford and beyond, and one for Fall River and beyond. So Westport's covered in that as well. So there could be a day where the van is driving around, or however you saw fit.
What about, last evening, I met with the Parent and Teachers Organization, and we were talking about, and one of our community members who comes to every meeting, Dina, talked about creating programs within the school, sort of diversionary programs, so that if someone is caught in school with a substance, and they're suspended, as opposed to suspension, setting up some kind of program where they have to go through some education about the substances and do.
I think it's super important. Obviously, right now with addiction the way that it is, I've gone and spoke with RCA, or they're calling us in when a kid has alcohol or is threatening to kill themselves. Getting to the students there, because most people don't know what that child is going through, right? So they usually have an alcoholic parent or an addict parent, or they're using themselves. I think speaking to the kids and getting into the school is super important. Getting them the information that they can take privately if they're not comfortable, but also how can you best support that kid? So the school department has called me lately on a couple because it's actually extremely hard to get someone under 18 services. And it took me, I spent like a full day trying to find it for the Fall River School Department, and it's very dependent on their insurance. If they have Mass Health, it's almost impossible. So I guess it's possible to utilize the programs that are there. I think it's more possible to get that child into counseling or something like that, you know, or build something, because the existing programs for teenagers are non-existent if you have Mass Health. Private insurance, you can be on a Zoom call, you can go to New Hampshire, you know, whatever. We used Butler a lot, but I think it is critical to get into the school department in any way, shape, or form that you can. Fall River has a diversion program with youth court. I don't know if you guys have something like that. They actually come to the police station and they do a trial by jurors, and it's other teenagers that have been kind of in trouble, and it's actually an amazing program, so that might be something that you can look into.
Do you, I'm thinking about other options in terms of schools or additional options. What about peer recovery coaches, recovery coaches in school? Have you done any of that, or would that be a model to look at?
Yeah, so with the FAST team, we have gone into the school like RCA or wherever, probably 7 times.
RCA stand for?
It's resilient. I'd have to Google it if you want me
Never
to.
mind.
It's basically like a second chance school. So they were already kicked out of another school.
Okay, I'm familiar with it.
Yep.
Big-
So we've been called there a good amount of times, and our recovery coaches and myself will work with them as long as the parents are okay with it. As far as providing an actual coach where they're going to bill insurance and those things, that's not allowed yet. The FAST team does it just on a free basis with parental permission, you know, in a limited capacity, of course, because usually teenagers aren't. They want some help, you know, but they're not willing to, like, for me, I started using it, I think, 13, and I graduated to the hard drugs around 17. I really wasn't open to listen to anyone, you know, but, so we take it very slow with them, you know what I mean? But I do think that a mentor program, the recovery coaching, and the youth courts, and actually speaking in that high school is very important and effective.
You said a mentor program or recovery coach, and then what was the other thing?
Speaking in the school.
Youth court.
Speaking in the schools, mentor,
Youth court.
recovery coach, and youth court. I just had something else come to me. I lost it. Boredom. So the Boys and Girls Club has stepped up in Fall River, putting some of the money so that the kids have stuff to do, because there's nothing you can do sober. And even in Fall River, this has been my biggest play. I wanted to open a recovery cafe where people can go get a coffee or a healthy juice, and you know, there's music being played or whatever night it is, you know what I mean? There has to be some kind of activity. So for children, we were talking with the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA. You have to keep them active. If they don't play sports or drama or do something, we all know what can happen. So I think a program, if you really want to target youth, that after school time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I mentioned last evening, is maybe setting up some kind of after-school programming. The school would certainly have to identify who the people are that would be doing it, but certainly looking at whether the opioid settlement fund could support those after-school activities financially.
Right.
And usually finances are an issue for a lot of families. The advocacy fund that set up, that was set up through the opioid settlement fund, wasn't it?
It was set up before that. We used to get private donations, and then when the opiate settlement money came out, utilize some of that money.
Yeah, because I remember in the beginning, they gave so much to the school and so much to the advocacy
Yep.
fund.
And in the EWE, so out of the opiate abatement money was EWE, some of the supplemental fast stuff, and the advocacy fund for the city. I mean, the good thing about the opiate abatement money is you basically get to make your own stipulations with it, right? The state doesn't require much data, they just ask that you do keep data, but they didn't put many stipulations. Like I said in Fall River, I don't consider it a grant, I consider it basically blood money, right? Everyone got this money because of the pain and suffering that all of us incurred with the epidemic. So for me, when they were asking me in Fall River, how can we best help? We have to attack all angles, right? The more broad you can create and comprehensive program, even through partnerships, the better you're going to be. Because we have to get them young, and do prevention, but we also have to help the ones that are already deep and entrenched in it. And unfortunately, I also believe the families that have now lost people, because they suffer just as much. So.
The question is, how do you connect with people that have had losses and the people that are struggling? Sometimes people are very private and they don't want to seek out or share. It's one of the things about this committee is we have one seat left, and the seat is somebody with lived experience in recovery and somebody comfortable enough in recovery that they could be here and be on camera because we are being recorded.
Yep. And I do have a couple people that are on my radar to have Pam speak to see if they're interested. I can't see why they wouldn't be, but I'll definitely try to get that done this week for you guys to start talking with them.
And they do live in Westport?
Yeah.
Okay. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And certainly having someone with lived experience and lives in Westport can say, this was hard, I couldn't get this, or this made it difficult.
Just like Dayton, there isn't many meetings in Westport.
Yeah,
So I was lucky that I did get connected with NA, and I had women that were willing to pick me up. But that's one pathway out of like 20 pathways now. NA and AA are great, but they don't work for everyone right now. So how do you reach those people that can't get a sponsor and get rides? And I truly believe the peer support and the recovery coach has filled in that gap for the other pathways.
How do you become a recovery coach?
It's not that hard.
What do you need to do that?
So initially, it's 2 weeks of training, the 1 week academy, and then there's an ethics and all that. Basically, it's 2 weeks. And after that, you can start your hours under supervision. And then I'm board certified. That means that I completed all the additional trainings. I got my 500 supervised hours. I passed an exam and all those things. But that's just to be board certified. You can start being a recovery coach after those 2 weeks of training under supervision. And I think you have to have at least a year clean type of guideline. But other than that, if a company is willing to give you a chance, whether as an intern or a paid position, you just start tracking your hours.
What is their hourly rate?
For someone that isn't board certified, it could be anywhere between like $17, $20 an hour that they'd make. Board certified, it's usually about $25 an hour. It goes up to that, $22, $25, depending how long you've been doing it. So even that High Point in New Bedford had a program where they were giving scholarships for people in recovery to become coaches. I don't think that's a bad idea either, because it doesn't take that long. And you get a sense, like when I first got clean, I had no idea what I wanted to be. I did want to be an FBI agent and track down serial killers, but once I started doing drugs, there goes my record, right? So there you go. And then it was like recovery coaching came out and it gave me a purpose, and I had a reason to start like living again, helping others helps yourself. So I don't think it's a terrible idea at all to send people to that academy.
Where is that academy?
They have them all over. They have them in Fall River, New Bedford, I mean, obviously, state towns beyond that, but sometimes right now they're even doing it virtually. The whole thing. I just had to do a recertification, and all my classes were online.
And is everybody a recovery coach? It has been in recovery.
Nope. You can be an ally, where you just have a friend or family, a worker. There's not many stipulations. As long as, you care and, you know what I mean, you're not in it for a paycheck, which why would you be? But no, you're fine.
How often do the recovery coaches meet with them?
That varies through every organization, but in my personal business, we suggest at least once a week meeting in person for at least an hour, and then phone check-in in between. But if they're calling or contacting you, that can be whatever it needs to be. Sometimes there's also something called Recovery Support Navigator, and they work hand in hand with a recovery coach. The RSN is the person that does all the secondary things. You have DCF in your life, you have court, you need to get to a doctor, you want to fix your teeth, you need to find a grant for sober living. Recovery Support Navigator works on all those secondary things,
Like a case manager, kind of?
pretty much, but for people in recovery. Yep.
And do you have recovery support navigators that work under you? Or I know they have them at
So
SPA.
because we don't, well, in my personal job, yes, but for the city, because we don't bill no matter what, we are able to just do both. So we call it recovery coaches, but we're absolutely doing RSN work as well.
I mean, one of the questions or challenges is that there's not an existing structure to sort of integrate, like we couldn't say, oh, we have a Thursday drop-in center a recovery coach could be at, or we have an organization, we could offer public space or, but would there be the possibility of either, you and FAST helping us kind of set up a system or program, or even having a branch here where, FAST oversaw, I don't know, let's say we had a scholarship program and then we had some Westport recovery coaches and navigators, or it was all through the granted program. And it was once a week, these hours in, the Board of Health or something.
Yeah, if you do decide that you are going to place some opiate abatement money towards recovery coaches, I am a recovery coach supervisor, so what we could do, instead of me having to send my recovery coaches right now, even though they're technically yours too, you just never used them, if you wanted to do it like that, absolutely, I could just oversee them, sign off on their hours, do the check-ins to make sure they could just call me but stay on site in Westport, So even right now, my recovery coaches, when they're out, they're on the scene, they say, this guy needs to get, right now I have someone that wants to go back to a school type to become a yoga trainer. They had no idea how to get funding for that, so while he was on the scene, he called me. I know that Mass Rehab will pay for that, so things like that. If you did want to have a separate, and the good thing is you don't need a location. We do all of our work in the community, whether in the house or picking them up and going to Dunkin' Donuts,
Cool.
Do you ever sleep?
I honestly, I don't do what I preach. So with my recovery coaches, I make sure they have boundaries and shut their phone off and don't do A, B, and C. I definitely will say that I answer the 24-hour hotline at night. My coworkers will answer it during the day, I work a little more than I should, but I do get some sleep.
Well, you do, it sounds like you're doing a lot. It sounds like the FAST team is all over the place. They're
Yeah.
everywhere and provide a number of services and direction. And I speak for myself when I say I really appreciate hearing from you today because, we've been trying to figure out what we can do. We have these funds, we want to use them in the most appropriate way, and trying to figure out where to start.
Yeah.
And starting with something that's already in existence and continuing to expand it if if funneling some of the funds into that can help,
Yep.
then that's something the committee needs to look at and make
Yeah.
a decision about. One of the things that we're working on is collecting data, finding out what people think is the best use of the funds. The other next phase to that is then setting up, this is where we want it to go, so then putting out for RFPs for people to apply for funds to run certain kind of programs. So it might be doing something in the school. It might be doing something once a week somewhere in town, in some structure. So getting support and help with that process as well would
Absolutely,
be
and
beneficial.
And one thing I can say too that I didn't mention is throughout all of this, Fall River built a database. We utilized Gelada. I do not recommend doing it on your own and starting over from scratch because it took me 2 years with my team to actually build it exactly how we needed it and getting it up and running. There's a lot of man hours, but we do have this Gelada system now. It tracks all of our substance use, mental health, and homelessness. It alerts the team to when there's a 911 call or someone needs a follow-up on the spot. Other organizations, we have MOUs with them. I think it's MOAs now, but either way. So the hospital just signed MOA Chelton with us. And so they'll also be entering data into it and be able to see what we're doing. So the South Coast Hospital has an outreach team. We work very well and collaboratively with them daily. When they go to the encampment now and they service John Doe, they see that the FAST team just worked with them. And then we won't be duplicating services. So the goal is to have multiple agencies. We wanted it to be Somerset, Swansea, Westport as well, because it's all the same people usually, whether they're your people or coming to our hospitals or whatever the case, right? So that was a very important part. The other part is in the reporting side, it already graphs and makes these pretty bar graphs and circle graphs, charts for everyone that we see. And anything that's being done or anything like that, it's already done. We built it, so that's another thing that you guys could have access
Can I ask,
to.
could you say what the name of that platform is?
Gelada, Julota.
I spelled it like the Italian ice cream.
I did.
And it's a platform that you use for your organization?
Yep, so,
And all of the surrounding services enter data into your system?
they're about to. So it took 2 years to build. We entered back data. We just got the MOUs to allow them to start entering.
And so it's, it has patient information?
Yes, so right now, it's for the FAST team, right? John Doe overdoses, we put it into the system. Our FAST team goes and outreaches them. We then put the encounter, it's called, into the system, or any follow-up encounters we have with them. 2 months down the road, they have a Section 12 mental health call. That's all in there. And then, as that new call is coming in, it immediately alerts the team on our phones. Now, to have the MOU at the hospital, the patients that they're working with, they have to get a release.
But this contains PHI?
Yes.
And it's interoperational with
Right now.
hospitals and...
Right now, we are in the phase of the MOU. It just got built, FAST team's been using it. So at this moment, the only person besides the city is Star that has access because they're partners with our grant. So we're one and the same. One of their recovery coaches comes out with us. We subcontract. So right now, as that MOU goes through legal and gets processed and all that, anytime South Coast Hospital is going to have a patient, and it's only outreach, so I actually am the one that controls, like the hospital's not going to be able to see
South
it.
Coast Behavioral?
Nope, South Coast Hospital. They have a street outreach team. So Chelton has a street outreach team.
Charlton?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Where they only go into the encampments and provide wound care and syringes and stuff. So specifically, that team that has already partnered with us on the EWE grant, they'll have a tablet with the ability to go into our program and assist, because we work with them side by side.
So, but you must have well-paid IT people
It's
supporting this program.
It's cost us a fortune to encrypt it and for them to, that's why I'm suggesting you don't do it yourselves, don't do that.
But is it fully funded? I mean, how do you fund it?
Yeah, we have a yearly subscription. We had to pay an amount up front because they provide 24/7 IT, all of it,
Who is that?
Gelada.
I mean, it's a company?
Yeah, it's the database company, the software company. The Fall River Police, at first, we were looking into what New Bedford used, which is RedCap. That did not provide 24-hour IT support and encryption and all those things. And the Fall River Police Department, surprisingly, did not have a round-the-clock IT department to protect it. I was shocked by that, but either way. So we did have to go to a company fully encrypted. Boston is the one that, Boston police use it. They're the ones that told us and came down to use it.
I'm
And it's not something we have access to. It's something that you have access to that you may be able to share some data with us.
Yeah, none of you guys obviously would have access.
Right.
You get a recovery coach that's then going to be on our team, then they would be able to have access with a new MOU.
Okay. We would like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You don't want to start from scratch. That was the most terrifying, horrible experience trying to build this up.
So your organization hired this company, Gelada,
Yes,
to come in and create a platform that you could use.
yes,
So it's like Epic in a sense, but it's interoperational across a whole bunch of different organizations.
yes, that's the goal. And that's exactly what they do. So Boston PD, even the DOJ, when we just got awarded this grant, they suggested Gelada. We chuckled because we're like, great, we've already been doing it for years.
So how much do you pay them?
The initial, I want to say the initial was roughly like 80,000, and then per year, it was 32,000 last year, but this year it did go up, so we asked that we get a 5-year contract, so I'm waiting to get the specifics of what that's going to be, but it's roughly 32 to 35,000 a year after you build it and have all the modifications.
So they maintain it all remotely for you?
Yes.
Okay, I get it now, okay.
Well, the data that we're collecting is not, I want to say it's more asking questions for people about what they think would be benefit, not necessarily getting.
Oh, yeah, I didn't
numbers.
mean
We're
that.
not doing that.
Yeah. I meant if you got a recovery coach and a team,
They would have it.
like, yeah, exactly. That way you could actually track your results once you implement it.
Does Westport interoperate with that system yet?
Nope, not yet.
But they could in principle, and you'd expect them, I mean, if a community wants to interoperate with that, you'd expect some sort of buy-in?
For that, yes, we were going to ask each
Approximately how much would
organization
that buy-in?
a percentage of the 35,000 now, so
Oh, but
just the
you
main
have
payment.
a number?
We were thinking that the 2 hospitals are people that we absolutely want and need on board. Then we have Star. I think we played around with one other one that we're in discussions with now, and then the town. So let's say you guys are the first town, it would be 5 people, so 5 divided, 6,500, something like that, 7,000.
And I think that's something that the chief had mentioned, that we're in the COSUP program, there is a database that they share, and then that may be something that they won't have anymore after September.
Well, that one is called SIMS, and we also have SIMS, and that's the state database. And it tracks the overdoses and it alerts you to towns. And what we did, because it didn't track enough of the stuff that we really needed, or the encounters, or alert anyone. And it's very limited access, right? Only the police and certain people can have access. So we went ahead and built Gelato, and in it, we put a one-way interface so that anything we enter in Gelato can then dump back into Sims as needed, so that we're not duplicating entering into everything.
That's great. Yeah, that was something that the chief had mentioned he was concerned about, and whether or not that would be part of the funds that we would use, so.
But this system identifies individuals.
Yeah, we're entering them.
So you know, like if someone is moving from town to town, you would know that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's really around follow-up care, it sounds like, and
Wow.
kind of interventions and case management. It's a care-oriented
Yes.
database.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
But does law enforcement have access to this as well?
No, we don't allow law enforcement to.
Oh, okay.
The only person is the police officer that is on our team, the fast response team, and he's a lieutenant, and he helped to build it, and we made sure that the actual chief and all of them understood that if we give it access to this one lieutenant, that it's not going to be used in any other way, it'd be illegal. So we did put all those stipulations, and I handpicked the lieutenant that comes out with us because he's someone in long-term recovery and wants to help.
Is it consensual, though?
What do you mean?
In other words, if someone's PHI is being put into the system, do they have to consent to that?
On the fast team end, no, because we already have them in IMC and ESO, the police and EMS databases anyway. So what we were doing was, instead of having to look at the police and the EMS database, we centralized it so that both go into that. And then there's a call that comes up. If we don't have an interaction, then there's nothing else being entered, you know. So when we go there, if they're consenting to speak with us and allow us to provide services.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Nikki before we let her go home and get some sleep? I wonder if anybody that's in the audience have a question for Nikki. If not, okay.
All
Nikki,
right.
we will be in touch with you.
Yes, anything you need.
The fact that, you know, there are already things in place to support Westport residents right now.
Yep.
I don't know that people in Westport know this. I didn't know this, right? So I think that, you know, the more we talk with you and sort of figure out the bridges and the making it easier for people to access support.
Yeah.
And
And
help.
then once you guys have a list of like what you really envision or would like to see here, then I can kind of put together a proposal for you of what it would look like, you know, free and whatever extra would cost, you know what I mean? And I could just go from there, because obviously you guys still have a little ways to go before you decide what you want to do. But once you know that, if I can help in any way, just let me know.
Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
Have a
much.
good night.
you.
Thanks for your
too.
work, too.
Yes. Okay, so moving on in the agenda, I found that very helpful to hear Nikki speak tonight. The next thing on the agenda is the approval of the March 18th minutes. Are there any questions or changes to the minutes? If not, I ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
So Craig moved and David seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so approved. All right, next is the member updates and reports, and I put interview questionnaire revision follow-up because we had spoken about any revisions that people thought needed to be made would to be sent to David. David, did you receive anything, any revisions, any questions?
No.
Okay.
So as it stands, we have a prototype of a questionnaire. I have a question about the questionnaire.
Okay,
So, I have a long list of providers that I have yet to contact. Well, I have some calls in, but no replies. I think we should do a mailing of some sort, but that involves looking up all the addresses, addressing the envelopes, stuffing the envelopes, stamping them, and all that. I mean, do we have any administrative assistance?
No, I haven't asked for any from the select board. We have some funds. We were given $5,000 for administrative funds.
So if I buy some stationery and some stamps and stuff,
You could do a link. I mean, you could email people, create a survey link, and then email that.
I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't know that people will respond, and if you're talking about emailing doctors and pharmacists.
You think they're
First
more
of all-
likely to respond
First
to
of
a
all,
letter?
I don't have those emails. It's not that easy to get. I mean,
Yeah, it
I
might
don't-
be
I don't know.
easier to get their
I don't know most
mailing
of these
address.
people. I mean, I could get them, but it's like pulling teeth. I mean, a few of them I have, but in the South Coast system. But I would just think of doing a mailing. And if people,
Are you talking about just to the healthcare professionals in town?
yeah.
I don't see a problem with that. I don't think it'll be that costly if you're just focusing on the people who are, you're talking about physicians who are working in town.
Yeah, I could get those addresses, I can get the addresses of their offices easily, and I can address, it'll look like junk mail, though, all right, it's from the opioid advisory,
If you handwrite it, it won't look that way, but.
well, who knows, but, yeah, but
You could, we could pay for designing a stamp that looks a little bit more professional without having to be printed stationery. Or we could.
You mean like, almost like a little letterhead
Yeah.
type of thing? Yeah.
Or even use town stationery if we have any, I don't know.
oh, yeah,
I'm saying, why not? I mean, if we,
yeah, okay, well,
and then you just have an imprint of opioid funds advisory committee, whatever
Yeah.
the name is.
and I would just enclose a stamped, a return envelope with the questionnaire, and if people want to fill it out and mail it back to us, then we'll get it, and then we'll have data of some sort, rather than call people and do interviews. I mean, there are a few people I actually want to talk to, and I plan to do that in the next few weeks.
Okay. Well, that would be helpful. Do anybody on the committee have any objections to David sending out the mailing to the physicians who are currently working in Westport? Not they're working in Fall River, but that are working in Westport, about their clients they're seeing in Westport, and
And the pharmacies.
the
I'm,
pharmacies.
I'm actually very curious about the prescribing practices of the pharmacists. I mean, they don't have to tell me names, they just tell me numbers. And we don't know anything about that.
Right. And basically, the interview questionnaire asks about things like, what do you know about and what ideas do you have about the opioid settlement money? It's asking general questions, and then what services do you think would be helpful, those kinds of things. So I would like to get this piece of the data collection, the input from the community. One of the things on the abatement agreement, it says on the beginning, we need input from the community
Right.
about how to spend funds. So that's what we're doing now. We're getting the input from community members. So I don't have any objections. If there are no objections, can I have a motion for David to go and send the letters and pay for the stamps and whatever else is needed? We could see if we can get the envelopes from the town.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know how that works.
Okay, so I can inquire about that, but otherwise, we can, pay for the mailing.
My list is like, I think it's 40 right now.
And if we have them, it might draw their attention, they might be thinking they're getting hit up for some sort of tax or something like that.
At least get them to open the envelope.
Yes, right.
Maybe giving people a
But they will open the
timeline.
envelope for that reason.
Yes, it would be helpful. Well, Okay, so-
I will move to support funding this effort for David to send these out.
And I second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So we'll work out, David, you and I can work out the logistics of,
Yep.
getting the stamps and all of that and getting payment. I think submitting any kind of receipt should be enough to give to the,
It's going to be a few dollars.
yeah. Okay, and then I have somebody from the audience who rose their hand. Would you go to the mic, please, Delia?
Hi, first time here, so I don't know the
Can you
backstory.
say your name?
Sure, Delia Windwalker, Westport. I've done a lot of surveys, and I'm curious, because you only mentioned physicians and maybe prescribers. I'm curious about people who are licensed therapists, because there are
Oh.
quite a few in town, and people who do that mental health work. And is there a broader casting to the community, inviting people publicly to contribute to the survey response?
Right.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
How do we identify the licensed therapists in town?
I would first start with Psychology Today, where people list their practices, and you can look people up by town. There are probably other ways to look people up.
Yeah,
And,
South Coast Chamber has a listing.
Yep.
There's a
Oh.
section on
Right.
professionals, yeah.
yeah,
So it'd be the One South Coast Chamber of Commerce, and their guide is online, but I don't know whether it's restricted to members or not, but you can call them. Michael O'Sullivan is the CEO of the One South Coast Chamber.
Is that the same Michael Sullivan? No.
It's a different one. Yes. So the question about broadening the questionnaire, we're doing it, we've done a couple of different things. One is I had a focus group and sent the information out in the community. There was going to be a focus group. I put it on Facebook, different Facebook pages in Westport, posted flyers around town. I did have, I think, 10 people come. I met with, this is the next thing on the agenda, but I met with the PTO last evening to talk about involving the school and the parents. And when I asked at the meeting how many that were at the meeting, there were about 10 or 11 people, if they would come, and there wasn't a response to coming to a focus group. But it was suggested that we do a Google form and give it to Laura Charette, who is also on this committee, and she could have it distributed district-wide, so to all the teachers and all the parents, and that would be a good amount of people. So, yeah, it's a great question. Some of it is I also don't want to just send a blanket letter to people in town, because I know it's going to end up in the trash. And I'm trying to reach people, we're trying to reach people in other ways to get them involved. Pam has gone out into the community and gone to NA meetings, or AA meetings, if you only have AA in town, to connect with people who it's targeted. I would like to also target the grandparents in town that are raising their grandkids. So I'm going to try to do that through the school department as well. So there's some efforts, but just a general blanket mailing would cost a great deal of money, and I think the return on that, my opinion, is that it wouldn't be great.
The only other thing I would add is that also in trying to reach out to folks with lived experience, in addition to the AA meetings, Dina helped us, relate to clients in recovery who are from Westport, and we're working with STAR to try to get, information. It may end up being through a survey, if not a focus group, for folks who seek services at STAR who are from Westport as well.
So is it okay if I make one suggestion about your survey technique? So people who do pay attention to paper sometimes will like to go to an online link to fill out that Google form rather than writing the form.
Okay.
So it's really good to give them both ways to respond. And the QR codes are another way to put that in any kind of publicity, if you want to get some people interested in even looking at the survey so that they can quickly get to it and scan through it. Paper surveys, I'm not sure anymore. I used to do a lot of mailing, so good luck. And thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. Doing an electronic survey is not in my skill set.
Okay,
I'm just telling you.
duly noted. Yeah, it's
So-
not
I'm
mine.
happy to help with that, yeah.
Yeah, QR, I mean,
Can
I know
make
what a
it-
QR
we
code
can
is
put
and how
this
to
in
use it.
and-
I don't know how to create it or, anything like that,
I'm
so.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, some of us are more technologically
But
challenged than
thank you,
others.
that's an excellent suggestion.
And part of that as well is then we have to get everybody in town's email address to, if we're going to, or how many emails addressed do we have
You
in
don't
town?
have to, actually, because if you have the QR code, then that takes people directly to the survey. So all they need is their phone to take an image of that, and they go
Okay.
right to the survey.
Okay. All right, well, can you come up, help Blair get up to the mic? And just introduce yourself.
My name is Blair Tatman. I live on Main Road in Westport, have for 40 years. 10 years of my nursing career was with older people, mainly about to decease. 20 years of my nursing work was at STAR with recovering addicts and alcoholics, or hopefully recovering. What I really wanted to say was I thought what the young woman presented here was marvelous from my point of view, and shows that STAR, I was really glad to hear that she had included STAR, or they had included STAR in what they're trying to do, partly because STAR has always had a difficult time really working its way into the community. They were sort of, we do this, and other people do that. And listening to what she proposes, the idea of taking the broadest perspective you can to helping people in need, whether it's recovery, social work, mental health problems, it's really all the same umbrella that they're under. And that's what I heard her speaking to, and I applaud it. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you.
Okay, so I inadvertently skipped Glenn. I'm sorry, Glenn. Lieutenant Glenn Nudes has a presentation for us about some equipment that, well, I'll let you go ahead and tell us what your presentation is about.
Thank you. So everything we've been discussing over the last few months with the meetings, especially tonight, super important. But what I'm looking at for the Westport Fire Department, in terms of the best way at the department, how we can have an impact on overdoses. And so the clinical paramedics, we start at the very beginning as far as administering Narcan for people who need it, who have overdosed. The stuff in between, what we've been talking about, rehabilitation, recovery, everything Nikki's been talking about, a lot of the paramedics have no idea about any of that. That's not what they do. Again, we do the beginning of it, administer Narcan several times. The story you've heard of us giving Narcan 3 times to the same individual, those are true stories. So you'll hear paramedics talk about that over and over again for years and years. I've been doing this for 31 years, and it's not changed. So it's going to happen. It's just hopefully our numbers are going to come down at some point. Me personally, we have 23 or 24 members in the fire department. I have been doing a ton of education over the last 28 years. I've been talking about Narcan a lot, probably over the last 10, 12 years. When I do basic CPR classes, everybody in my class is well educated what Narcan does, what to expect from it, how it works, how long it's going to work. So I've been doing that, but again, that's what I do. A lot of other paramedics, they don't teach, they do their job. But the things we've been talking about, again, they don't specialize in that. So they do the beginning part of it, the Narcan administration. in the very last part if it comes to the point where resuscitation has to be done. So as far as what I'm looking at for the fire department, resuscitation is all the advanced life support equipment that we use. Narcan, anybody can give Narcan. It's better now because back in the day, it was just administered. It wasn't even done by police officers or first responders. It was all paramedics. Now, over the years, any individual can get Narcan, and that's been happening. That's a great thing. We're keeping a lot of people alive doing that. But again, we're still having overdoses. So there's overdosing, which is somebody in and out of consciousness. The next stage is when they've overdosed, they're unconscious. You're not going to wake them up with stimulation. Then they have agonal breathing, which means they're breathing very, very slow, usually making noise with it. At that point, they'll go into respiratory arrest. Narcan does work for all of those patients. What it doesn't work for is when you eventually go into cardiac arrest. Narcan does not work for cardiac arrest. That's an emergency. It's a very time-sensitive emergency. Paramedics need to be there. And one of the devices that we have to have in terms of giving someone the best chance of survival is a cardiac monitor. Now, last meeting, Donna talked about getting an AED. AEDs are fantastic. AEDs have one purpose. They shock people in a shockable rhythm. Cardiac arrest doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get defibrillated. There's a lot of reasons, different reasons to go into cardiac arrest. And there's some lethal cardiac arrhythmias. Some can be defibrillated, which an AED would do, and others cannot be defibrillated. Those patients get resuscitated by medication, fantastic CPR. Again, it's a very time-sensitive emergency, advanced airway equipment. So there's a lot to it, to resuscitating somebody in cardiac arrest in general, but when it comes to an overdose, it's not just giving Narcan. Narcan does not work for those patients in cardiac arrest. So what I'm looking to do is over the last month, I was doing a lot of homework, trying to use some of the money to get equipment out there, such as monitors. We do have monitors now, of course. They're mandatory. The problem with the monitors we have now, they're becoming outdated. The FDA wants new monitors in the medical world every 8 years. We're coming up on that 8-year mark. They're expensive. Anything in the medical world is super expensive. So I'm trying to find out how I can get these monitors done. So what I did find out is over the last month, I found 6 fire departments who have used their opiate funding to buy monitors. So that was good. I put all my homework together. The wind kind of got taken out of my sail the last few days because I found out there's a possibility that the fire departments that use that funding to buy those monitors might have to return it. And it's something we certainly can't do here. So I don't know if that's how true that is yet. If they have to return the funding, that's, again, I don't want to go down that road. But it was something that I was going to propose. I've been beating up the vendor for the last month. I did get the price down. I have all those quotes. But yeah, it's not just Narcan's fantastic, but I always called Narcan a Band-Aid. It's not going to fix the problem. I've given people 3 doses of Narcan in 24 hours, the same person. And those stories are going on and on. We're going to have overdoses. We're not going to get rid of it. People, the white powders are out now. It's not just people using, heroin and fentanyl. It's all white powders now that they're finding on the street, which is going to be more of a challenge now. The Vicodin, the Percocet, the Adderall, which is huge in the colleges and high school. The Xanax, it goes on and on. We're finding pill presses now, especially in the cities. They're buying their own pill presses and making these powder pills. Younger kids are getting into it. They didn't even know what they're getting into. And it's not just that generation. The number one cause of death between 18 and 35 are overdoses. But we've had plenty of folks that are elderly, have surgery, they come home with pain patches, and they've overdosed. Some we resuscitate, some we don't. But it's not, again, resuscitation in cardiac arrest is not Narcan. It's advanced, medication we're using, advanced airways, certainly our monitors. So if you're in cardiac arrest, you don't go from dead to alive. Fantastic. You struggle. If we resuscitate you from being hypoxic or lack of oxygen, you go into a lot of different arrhythmias that are very challenging and are only treated with medication. And that's what we do. So it's a struggle resuscitating, number one, and keeping them alive, number two. So that's what we do. The beginning, again, the Narcan administration, and the very end of it is the resuscitation. So I thought getting those monitors, it's a lot of new technology. our stuff, again, the makers, FDA wants new monitors because the old stuff is just becoming obsolete at some point. And again, we're coming up on that timeframe. So like anything else, it's all new technology. I'm just finding ways to purchase this. Of course, it would be used for all cardiac arrest, but again, overdosing is in there. So again, I didn't want to ask for anything until I'm 100% sure, or I get an answer and they say, yeah, you know what, you can use the funds for that. Yes.
I wonder if, given what you said, and maybe one of the issues, with the state is that it's used for many things that aren't overdose. If you calculate the percentage of overdoses, of your responses and, rough, percentage of those that you need this kind of advanced resuscitation, would that be a justification potentially ask for that percentage of the total cost of, getting new monitors? You know what I mean? Like if it seemed proportionate, town kick in some, this kick in some to proportionate for those calls, just another way to maybe think about it that could pass through the state's scrutiny.
Possibly. The big issue why this funding it might be an issue is because those monitors are mandatory. So if this, hypothetically, if this overdose
Right.
never occurred, it doesn't matter. We have to buy these
get it
monitors
anyway, yeah,
somehow.
I see.
I was just saying, you know what, there's money available.
Right.
It'd be a great thing for the town, for the fire department, instead of
Right.
trying to find this.
Right.
It's great technology. We want to provide the best, we want the best technology. We want to know we're giving the best, service that we can with what we have to work with. So, again, nothing's cheap. It was just a way I was excited to find this and say, you know what, this is a possibility for the fire department.
What is the cost of,
I have two, well, the initial cost, I think I gave you, the initial cost of three, so we have 3 ambulances in town. So I wanted to supply all 3 ambulances. The initial cost, and these monitors are the best technology you're going to get right now. They just came out new for 3 monitors. The initial quote was $190,370. The last quote I got after beating them up, they gave me for the 3 monitors now $157,169. I don't think I can squeeze any more out of them. And I have, I think, an individual monitor. I got them down to, I think, in the mid-50s. You have that quote. And one of the big things too is I wanted to put one of these, hold on. So we have 3 monitors now, which is somewhat becoming obsolete. But one of those monitors, I was thinking to put down in Horse Neck Beach. We actually cover the beach now from mid-June to Labor Day. We've had overdoses down the beach. And again, yeah. So in my eyes, we're not stopping it. The goal is to get the numbers down. It's just never going to go away. And again, cardiac arrest is not just, Narcan's not working. It's not made for that. You have to defibrillate them. There are a lot of times, so when we defibrillate patients, the number 1 cause of that are heart attacks, not an overdose. When you go to an overdose, we're dealing with other arrhythmias where something called advanced life support is going to come into play, which is the medications, especially controlling the airway. So the new technology, we know how much oxygen you need, how much carbon dioxide is in the blood. So we're monitoring all that from point A all the way to the hospital to keep you alive. So it's super important equipment. Again, it's just the stuff we're using now is becoming obsolete, so we got to find the funding at some point. So yeah, that was the issue.
Sounds like we in the town have to support that.
Yeah, it's not cheap. Like I said, everything, I do the ordering. I'm on top of the budget all the time with the town and everything. It's a challenge. Everything, every year is nothing goes down, right? Everything's going up, especially medical supplies.
have we lost any Westport residents because we didn't have the proper equipment?
Manpower. The issue with that is when you have cardiac arrest, one thing that's working against us, any kind of cardiac arrest, it's a most time-sensitive emergency. You really have cardiac arrest, our resuscitation rate, number 1, is about 12%. It's a national number, which is low. The issue is when you go into cardiac arrest, we want to resuscitate somebody. We have good numbers in the first 10 minutes. So when I'm teaching about CPR, cardiac arrest, the good things usually happen in the first 10 minutes, and bad things happen real quick after 10 minutes. That's just the way the body works. So when I say manpower is, I wish we had, 50 paramedics, we don't. We have a total of 21. We have 4 groups. We have a total of 21 paramedics. We're trying to get more. It's a struggle because it's money. So we use mutual aid more now than ever before, but so does Tiverton, so does Little Compton and Dartmouth. They're using mutual, forever. You're using mutual aid every day. Everybody's call volumes are going up. That's just the way the world works. So unfortunately, sometimes when someone overdoses, it takes time to get there. In the summertime, it's not strange to have Westport 3 ambulances all out in the stations are unmanned. That's not strange. I mean, summer is our call volume triples. So we're relying on other communities, and they're doing the same thing with us. But when it comes to cardiac arrest, it's time sensitive. So the nice thing today is our police officers do carry Narcan. That's been a huge help. A lot of families have access to Narcan now. That's been a huge help. It's not a perfect world. It's not perfect, but it's been a big help. I just want to know, on the fire department side I've always said we have the best equipment available for our residents. We have good equipment, but it's becoming obsolete. And I found a way to maybe get new technology, but it was a little, like I said, I got this information a few days ago where they're not sure if this is going to fly through the committee, the funding.
Part of the strategy would be, what I see is if there was some data that we could show that because, we've had so many overdoses and they were in cardiac arrest, that lives could be saved. I know that from a webinar that I went to from the state, Mass Cares, and they do webinars, and people ask that very question, and that's where the AED question came in. What if we want to buy an AED? They said, absolutely not. What about other equipment? And they said, unless the equipment is specifically for opioid overdose, or related to risk reduction or harm reduction. And so I'm part of my thinking to support, some of what you're asking for, a percentage of what you're asking for, is to maybe have some data about how many people we've lost. And if having this equipment could possibly save lives, then we may be able to talk with the state about what our numbers are and maybe be allowed to support with a certain percentage for the equipment. I'm grasping because I know that you're telling me you're hearing that the other fire departments or paramedics have to pay, may have to pay back the money that they use, and I want to avoid that at all costs. So, yeah.
You mentioned that there were some overdoses at the beach. Any numbers off the top of your head?
I would have to speak with Chief Dunn as well, because again, they have police there.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I can get those numbers for you. I don't have them
I'd be
tonight.
very curious about that
Numbers,
information.
data helps, and Val is the data queen. That's what I call her. But data helps because if we're going to argue to be able to use funds for certain things, if we have some data that shows that, this would save lives, and it would save lives of people who overdose from opioids, that there may be some way to justify a percentage rather than paying for all of it, but a percentage of it. Because I certainly, I feel strongly that I want to support the entities that are already in Westport that need support to help people, right? And that's fire and police. Whatever we can do to support, to save lives. And so if there's a way for us to come up with some data where we could go, or I could go to Mass Care and say, look, here's some data for you. Can we justify paying a percentage of this equipment as a result of the data? So that's what I would encourage you to do. Does anybody have any other questions for Lieutenant Nunes? No?
I'm going to speak very carefully. I would just say that we may want to have a subcommittee or 2 or 3 people to consult with Glenn so that when we bring it back, it's in the form of a conclusion not the form of the type of deliberation that we've been doing for the past 15 minutes.
Yeah.
'Cause I became extremely nervous.
Okay. All right, so some people have some of the data, we can certainly look at it, but you can get back to us on what happened with the other departments?
Yeah, I have six departments that have went ahead and used the funding, so, and I'm very close with them. I have,
Right. And just a reminder, because I have to say this, we talk about it as a committee, and then we make recommendations to the select board, right? We're not making the decision. We're saying this is where we'd like the money to work in Westport, to help the residents of Westport. So I'd want to be clear about that. It's not us making the decision, it's us recommending and advising the select board on that. Okay. There's no other comments or questions for Lieutenant Nunes, and we can go on to other reports. Does anybody else have anything to report?
I mean, I mostly already said it, but that I'm continuing to try to connect to the right folks at STAR to follow up on getting more input from Westport residents getting treatment there. I think what else we spoke about. I mean, I will be going forward, we'll talk about data. I'm going to help organize the data we're collecting.
We also talked about having a deadline for data collection, that, we come up with a date, we have to have all our data, and we can now talk with Nikki about data. So, but by, maybe by June or July, and then from there, then we start talking about RFPs, where we want to go, what the next steps are. So, but we need to have a stop point where we're stopping collecting data to then go forward and present to work towards RFPs and then present to the select board. So does anybody have any concerns about setting a limit and a time to stop collecting data and then make decisions? Or any input into that? Okay. I think we need to see what kind of data we get from the questionnaire.
Yeah, I think the point about getting therapists, clinical psychologists and the like, MSWs, in town, and have a real handle on what's going on, more so than the physicians, I think. And it's hard to tap into that. It's hard for me to tap into that, but we need to do that.
Okay.
I think that's a very important point that was brought up.
And if I am going to try to work on getting a Google questionnaire out into the school department, I'll talk to Laura about how to do that and to come up with a questionnaire for the parents and teachers. We may use some of the very same questions, but there may be some adjustments to that. When I asked at the parent teachers organization meeting last night, I said, I believe there's a few grandparents who are raising their grandkids, and everybody on the committee and the organization were nodding their heads. They know a lot of grandparents who are raising their grandkids. I really would like to capture some input. So I'm going to also ask Laura, the adjustment counselors, if they know a way for us to connect with the grandparents. But certainly we have to have a point where we say, okay, we've gotten enough information, we're looking at the information, and we say, okay, this is where we think funding could go, and then begin to organize the process of RFP, people applying for money, and then making decisions, and then presenting to the select board and our plan was by the fall, right? Just get money starting to be distributed.
Nikki did say she could get us the Fall Rivers RFP Yeah, and then we can kind of look at that and use it as a model.
That's
So I can
that's
ask,
in the, that, already forgot the acronym,
The report,
the
Yeah.
consulting company that
Yeah.
you can get it
hired
online.
to
Yeah.
do that.
And
all
there's,
of a website, the city.
yeah, and I think there's a couple of other examples too from smaller communities, and I think that's what probably we should look at. But, yeah, there are some examples of that. So we don't have to start from scratch.
Right.
Could I ask a very basic question? If someone is on Mass Health and they need behavioral health services or psychotherapy, whatever, are there people in town who accept that Mass Health for that kind of service?
Well, every therapist is, first of all, you have to be able to be accepted by Mass Health as a treater. You have to get in their panel. And then you have people who may not want to take Mass Health
Right.
because the payment is much lower.
But are there people in town,
Well, I have no idea.
do you know? Oh, okay.
No. So, I mean, that could be part of the survey.
Do you know if South Coast Behavioral accepts Mass Health?
I believe that they do,
Oh,
but that South Coast Behavioral Health is not in Westport. It's,
Yeah, but it's close.
yeah, well, I believe they do accept
Oh, okay.
Medicare. But I think for,
They're always making note of the fact that they have an unusually high burden compared to other hospitals and hospital systems in the region for taking Mass Health people.
Okay.
and there are not enough treaters. You heard Nikki said, especially for kids, for teens, there's not enough treaters, and that's one of the issues. So, I mean, certainly, that's going to be one of the questions on the questionnaire. Do you accept Mass Health? And that, hopefully we'll get responses when we get that. So we'll work, you and I will work together on getting the list of the therapists in town through the recommendations of what Craig said, and then we'll go from there with that. And then I'll talk to Laura Charette, who's also on the committee, about how can we do a Google questionnaire and get it out to parents before the school year's over. Well, it doesn't really matter if it's by like maybe mid-June. So I'll work on that. And if there's no other updates,
Can I add one more thing? Just
Sure.
that, we had also discussed, and Stephanie Barboza from STAR had reached out about anti-stigma campaign, and there'll be a big event or training in September to try to educate folks and reduce stigma on mental health and substance use in particular. And then we want to follow up with Olive, the regional public health coordinator who also does anti-stigma work, thinking about potentially investing in or supporting an anti-stigma campaign in Westport. And I'm not sure what our follow-up is in the next one, but we also discussed the possibility of looking at communications, investing in communication support that would get the word out about all the resources. And our conversation today with Nikki made me think about that again, given that, there will be more resources once we finish funding things, but even now, there are more resources than people are using or aware of. So getting some skilled professional sort of marketing communications help to strategize, sort of from a public health point of view, to strategize how to best get the word out would be something else to consider. Don't know if it's something we'd have someone present on or just seek out, but if anyone has antenna about that or ideas, that might be something that's helpful.
I mentioned that last night too. I said, there may be something that we can do with the kids to have them involved, where they're educating each other and providing maybe some kind of with incentives is something that you can use the money for. So a prize of monetary prize or a gift card to some local place, but there's things that we can do. I really want more people to be involved and be aware, and we've got to find out ways to do that. In Fall River, the one group that I know, United Neighbors, they have a big, I think they just had their health fair, and they have these giveaways, and the people that are there, it's a lot of people, because they're giving away a flat screen TV, they're giving away, gift cards to Stop and Shop or to any of the local Shaws, any of the local Market Basket. So that they do things to get people to want to get the information and be connected and get the information. So I think that's something that we can talk about a little bit further, but certainly that anti-stigma campaign is something that we can support with maybe not without even spending any of the funds. But. All right, is there anything else before? Are there any other topics that I didn't have 48 hours to talk about or to put on the agenda, rather? Okay, we're going to set the next meeting. And the next meeting is, goodness, we're already going into May. Here is my. And I don't know if it's something that we may need to talk about changing because, and whether or not this is going to continue to be an issue, but Laura Charette wasn't able to be here, but I believe she's involved in the school committee stuff right now because they're going to, yes, it was tonight, and they're in the process of hopefully hiring a superintendent. So she's distracted on other things and she's not been able to come, so we may or may not have to change or look at changing the date.
Well, May 13th is the next second Tuesday.
Don't we do the third Tuesday?
It's a third, I think.
We do the third
That
Tuesday.
would be the May 19th.
Yes. No, it's the 20th.
20th.
So-
Sorry about that.
So are there any issues with people being here for the meeting on the 20th?
It's already on my calendar for the 20th.
Okay. All right, so the next meeting is set for May 20th at 6 o'clock here, as usual. And so, on that note, if there's no further business, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.